Last 5 seconds. Ready? Start. Apart from the urgent need of developing and enriching the regional language, there is another question which also demands careful consideration. Ours is a multilingual country. We must have a common language that would enable the different linguistic regions to communicate with one another in matters of inter-regional and national life. After full consideration, the Constituent Assembly provided in the Constitution that this language shall be Hindi in the Devanagari script, the form of numerals for official purposes of the Union being the international form of Indian numerals. It was an unanimous agreement and one arrived at after due accommodation of all the relevant interests. I think that there is no reason whatever why anyone in this country should feel that his or his group's interest would be adversely affected by this decision in any way. I do not think that I need say more than that within the educational system of each linguistic region there should be arrangement for the teaching of the union language. It is necessary to emphasize this so that those speaking languages other than Hindi may not find themselves at a disadvantage in any respect whatsoever. How and at what stage instruction in Hindi can be fitted in with the general scheme of education in non-Hindi regions has to be worked out without delay and steps taken to implement any plan that may be adopted so that within the time allowed by the constitution we may be able to do without the English language for official purposes of the union. This state has three languages spoken by the people in regions which are more or less marked. It had been making every earnest efforts to develop Urdu, which I consider to be only another style or form of what has been adopted by our constitution as the language of the union. Though it has its own script and distinctive vocabulary, it has thus the same problem that our multilingual country as a whole has to solve, but this state has had the advantage of having made headway with a language for public purpose which is distinct from the three regional languages. We should conserve and derive what benefit and lessons we can from the experience so gained, and I feel that it may prove of great value as giving us a foundation on which the to build the present Indian educational system. I welcome you not only as representatives of a great nation who have come to India on a cultural mission, but also as members of a young university established in this old city of Delhi. I am naturally reminded of the days when nearly 2000 years ago not one but a large number of speakers and propagators of truth defied distance in hospitable mountains and deserted and went to far off countries carrying not the sword of destruction but the torch of knowledge and culture. India has the highest mounting ranges in the world which form one of its sides. On all the other three sides, it is surrounded by the mighty ocean, but neither the high snow clad mountains nor the stormy seas could deter these people who were bent upon visiting distant lands to carry the message of Lord Buddha. Thus, three land routes were established in the course of time, one through the northwest of India, through Afghanistan, Central Asia, and what is now sinking right into China, another straight across the Himalayas through Tibet, and the third through the northeast corner of India and Burma. Besides these, there was the sea route round the Malayan Peninsula. Hundreds of preachers and missionaries who went from different parts of India were welcomed and absorbed in the life of China, where they spent many years translating into Chinese the treasures of Sanskrit and Buddha's lore. But it was not a one-way traffic. Many pilgrims from China came either through the western route or the eastern route to India, where they lived for many years. They have left accounts of their travels and of the places they visited, and these are a most authentic sources of history for a period which is otherwise largely enveloped in darkness. This intercourse between two countries continued for 1,000 years or more, and I am not aware of a single instance in which either one country or the other thought of sending its armies rather than its missionaries and pilgrims to the other. It was, as has been very well said, not a political or imperialistic victory which either country wanted, but a dharma vijay. This exchange almost came to a stop nearly 800 or 900 years ago, and even during the recent past when travel has become very much easier, there has been little contact between the two countries. It is therefore a matter of congratulation for both that this contact is being re-established, and it is a happy augury that this time it has started with a visit from you to India after a very long time stop.